is up ahead. It's about this big so far.
Oh my gosh, I can see it. Let's get closer.
Look at that boat.
The Ever Megas.
It's massive, 1,200 feet long, fresh off a 2-week trip from Taiwan, about to call at the port of LA.
Look at that. It's green. We're looking up at the Ever Megas, 7 miles out from the LA port, out in the wide open ocean. This sucker is about the biggest ship that we regularly see come into the American ports, coming in at 15,000 TEUs. It just towers above us.
But here's the thing, it's not even close to the biggest ships in the world. Just look at the Ever Megas next to the largest container ships. The Ever Megas can carry 15,000 containers. There are more than 200 ships that can carry over 20,000 containers. And none of them regularly come to the US.
We seem to have hit a ceiling for the size of ships coming into US ports.
Which makes everyday items more expensive for you.
It's $9 a pound. It used to just be $5 a pound.
Meanwhile, the world's largest container ships are fueling Europe's economy, supercharging China's rise and pulling into Chinese-owned megaports throughout Latin America.
That's going to be another transshipment hub.
And the US is watching from the sidelines. So to find out why the biggest ships don't come to the US, I did what we always do on Business Explains the World. I got out into the world to find answers. I went to the port of LA, rented a dinghy, rode along this massive ship, and dug into the research. And what I found is that the obstacles keeping big ships from coming here speaks to a much bigger problem America is facing. And it actually starts here. America is in the midst of an affordability crisis. Everything is getting more expensive.
Look at this coffee. It's $9 a pound. It used to just be $5 a pound. This piece of furniture over here, perfect for a college dorm room. $278. Furniture prices have gone up 25%. After college, you like to buy a house, and that's getting more and more difficult these days. You're going to need power tools like the circular saw, which is now $70. Construction materials take the cake. They grew 43%.
And I think we can see one reason why. Made in Colombia, made in Vietnam, made in Vietnam. All these things come in ships across the ocean. If we get those goods shipped here for lower costs, we will see better prices. And for the last 75 years, each time ships got bigger, ocean shipping got cheaper. These latest megaships with 24,000 container equivalents traveling between China and Europe continue to cut rates lower than the 16,000 container limits we see in America. Of course, ship size is just one possible solution to the recent price hikes, but it's one I rarely hear about. So I wanted to know why big ships don't come here. I quickly found an obvious obstacle. They don't fit. Let me explain. Let's see what happens if an ultra-large container vessel like the MSC Arena tried to dock at a U.S. port. Let's start with the largest city in America, the port of New York and New Jersey. Here's Manhattan. You can see Central Park. This little dot is the Statue of Liberty. Ships come in from the Atlantic Ocean to the Upper Bay. Now let's zoom in to a closer map. You can see the Statue of Liberty right there. Now here's where you can enter the container port. So, can the arena fit? Well, the channel to the port's berth needs to be between 50 and 55 feet deep. Now, how deep is this port? It's about 50 feet deep. Now, that's good enough for the big ships, but not the biggest, like the arena. By the way, this depth requirement is going to eliminate a lot of ports in the south, too. But depth is not the only problem. The MSC Arena is also tall. So bridges are an issue too. The biggest berths are on the New Jersey side over here. It needs to pass underneath the Bayonne Bridge built in 1931. In 2019, the Port Authority spent $2 billion to raise it to be 215 feet above the waterway, which would allow for Neo-Panamax ships. We'll come back to what Neo-Panamax means later. But how tall above the water is the MSC Arena? 265 feet. No dice. But wait, by 2019, we knew ships were going to get bigger. Why didn't the bridge lifting project account for ships taller than 215 feet? Well, the first part of our answer lies here. When you look at where the world's containers actually move, the pattern jumps out immediately. This corridor from Shenzhen to Rotterdam is basically a conveyor belt. Constant ships, constant volume. Now look at the transatlantic. Way lighter. And that's the key. There just isn't enough traffic between Europe and the US East Coast to justify sending the biggest ships here. Okay, so what about the ships coming from Asia to the East Coast? Remember, big ships make things cheaper, and the big cities on this route have massive demand to justify the biggest ships. Having these giants come from Shanghai to New York just makes sense, right?
Well, this question warrants a story time. Since America's founding, it has been a leader in global shipping. The colonies specialized in shipbuilding due to our deep ports and extensive forests. In the 1800s, we built 2/3 of the whole world's whaling vessels. And then in 1914, we built the freaking Panama Canal. And that changed everything. Previously, ships sailing from New York to San Francisco would go through the dangerous Magellan Strait at the bottom of South America. Now, they cut through here. It was a triumph of engineering. Look at this. The canal's locks were 110 feet apart. At the time, that was plenty. I mean, look at the ships we had back then. But that width quietly set a limit that shaped U.S. shipping for decades. If your ship couldn't fit through the canal, it couldn't reach both coasts. So America built ports and ships that fit inside that box. Then came World War I, exposing another problem. Most of the ships carrying U.S. goods weren't even American. When the war began, foreign fleets vanished and American trade grounded to a halt. Afterwards, Congress panicked. They never wanted that dependence again. So in 1920, this guy, Senator Wesley Jones of Washington State, proposed a simple fix. If America built its own ships, crewed them with its own sailors, and kept them under its own flag, we'd never be vulnerable again. This idea became the Merchant Marine Act, better known as the Jones Act. At first it worked, protecting shipyards and guaranteeing American jobs. But eventually that protection led to some major downsides, as we'll see later.
At this point, America sat at the top of global shipping. The economy was booming, our ports were modern, and big ships, well, they simply weren't an option yet.
By the end of 2 world wars, Britain's dominance of the ocean was in decline. America owned more than half of the global shipping capacity. During the war, we built thousands of convoy vessels and at war's end, sold them to private shipping. One of them was the SS Lane Victory, built here in LA in June 1945. These ships are what they call break bulk. Unlike a bulk commodity like coal or grain that you could just load on the ship with a conveyor belt, these you have to break up the bulk in different size packages and crates. It took skilled, able-bodied seamen to manually pack the stuff in so that there wasn't any space wasted and the weight was evenly distributed. Because the cargo was packed to minimize space, they had to unload every single piece before they could organize it for the next step. This is a process that would take weeks. These problems were solved when this box was invented. Standardized shipping containers changed everything. Their initial voyage lowered unloading costs by more than 90%. Containers made global shipping faster, cheaper, and infinitely scalable, and allowed for and incentivized bigger ships. Much bigger. Because remember, bigger makes long ocean voyages much more economically efficient. Europe and Asia led the charge with ships like this, and this. They weren't constrained by the Panama Canal like we were, and their infrastructure grew with it. They dredged deeper, built taller cranes, and constructed man-made port islands. Now, eventually, the Americas realized we had to catch up.
Hi, Dynamo's for people building careers, communities, and lives. You. To build that life, you have one of the most powerful forces on your side: compound interest. That's why I want to tell you about Wealthfront, today's sponsor. Wealthfront is a tech-driven financial platform. Its mission is to help millennials and Gen Z grow their savings into long-term wealth. Dynamos are busy, intelligent people. We want our finances to work for us, especially when the economy is uncertain. Wealthfront's cash account makes that easy. High yield on your uninvested cash, no account fees, no minimum or maximum balance required to earn the base APY from program banks. APY means annual percentage yield. It's the real rate of return you get on your savings over a year. And right now, new clients can get an extra 0.65% APY over the base rate for 3 months on up to $150,000 for a total 4.15% variable APY when you open your first cash account. Learn more through my link. Go to wealthfront.com/dynamo. All right, now I have to say this part too. This is a paid endorsement for Wealthfront. It may not reflect the experience of others. There's no guarantee of future performance or success. Wealthfront Brokerage is not a bank. Rate is subject to change. Promo terms and conditions apply. For more information, see the episode description. Thanks, Wealthfront. And now let's get back to the episode.
So the Panama Canal was upgraded at a price tag of $5 billion to allow ships of up to 168 feet wide to pass through. So by 2016, the canal can now handle ships of up to 14,000 container equivalents, even though by this time the largest container ships were approaching 20,000. So this explains the east coast of the US. There isn't enough transatlantic traffic, and despite its upgrades, the Panama Canal is still not wide enough. But remember, we're trying to answer why the world's biggest ships avoid America, not just one side of it. So, what about LA? To find out, I decided to get up close and personal.
We're looking up at the Ever Megas, 7 miles out from the LA port, out in the wide open ocean. This sucker is about the biggest ship that we regularly see come into the American ports, coming in at 15,000 TEUs.
But actually, that's not that big. And the ports of LA can technically handle much bigger. Combined, the LA and Long Beach ports are massive. It takes you 20 minutes to drive across them on the freeway in good traffic.
We got cranes as far as the eye can see, and they're huge. Over 18 million containers go through these ports every year.
And the LA port is plenty deep. They've got big cranes everywhere and large man-made islands. And the ships coming in from Asia don't need to go through Panama, obviously. And go back to the traffic map. Yep, plenty of demand. But the biggest ships still don't come here. Okay, I think I'm hitting a wall. The West Coast ports are big enough, and the demand is high enough. What gives? Why don't the big ships come to LA? I decided to talk to some experts. And boom, they hit me with perhaps the most obvious explanation. And it actually has very little to do with our ports at all.
If you look at ports like Rotterdam, they're literally putting the box on the ground and then putting it on another ship.
Most of them don't get put on trucks.
When the ports of Rotterdam and Antwerp were discussing accommodating the next generation of container ships, they had a huge concern.
The Belgian government was very clear it didn't want that much more truck traffic in small and crowded countries. The Dutch government said the same with respect to Rotterdam. The government was insistent that the terminal operator had to guarantee that a certain percentage of these containers would go out by barge into other locations.
The Netherlands and Belgium didn't want the entire European continent's truck traffic clogging up their small countries' highways. So now, right after a big ship is unloaded, most of the cargo is immediately placed back onto smaller feeder ships, either to go across the North Sea or through the continent's many navigable rivers. This is super fast and efficient. Smaller ships move cargo up and down the coast, taking pressure off portside warehouses and highways. But in the US,
everything that comes in on these ships has to somehow be put onto a truck or else onto a railroad car. And that takes time. You've got lines of trucks waiting to collect these containers.
Even if megaships can dock here, it will sit there for days, losing money by the hour. So yes, technically, a few ports can handle the biggest ships, but the ships themselves don't want to come. So why don't we have a network of feeder ships like Europe and China? Well, remember the unintended consequences of the Jones Act I mentioned? To this day, it still prevents foreign ships from transporting goods domestically, and the US did not build its own fleet of small cargo ships. But before you go ahead and give all the blame to this outdated piece of legislation, let's go back and look at Europe's feeder system. A river barge can go all the way from Rotterdam, up the Rhine, all the way to Basel, Switzerland, with a population of 200,000. Even more than that, the Rhine, via canals, connects to the Danube all the way to the Black Sea. Now, look at the American West Coast. Notice anything? Along the whole coast, there's only one river, going up to the middle of nowhere, Idaho. Even if we had feeder ships, there'd be nowhere for them to go. Outside of California, the West is sparsely populated. Almost all the cargo that gets unloaded goes straight on a train to service inland America. It's the only option we have. So, to recap, big ships don't come here because East Coast ports are too small. And the transatlantic route doesn't have enough traffic to justify them. And on the West Coast, the ports that can take them unload and distribute too slowly. Because, unlike Europe and China, we don't have a feeder ship system to clear out cargo fast. And we don't have that because the West Coast has almost no navigable rivers. America just isn't built for mega ships. What would it take for the US ports to finally handle the most efficient ships on the planet? A massive upgrade for how we move cargo out of the ports. Way more distribution capacity, way more automation. In 2021, Congress passed the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, which allocated $17 billion just for port improvements. $600 million a year to dredge channels deeper, expand terminals, and buy the taller cranes. You can already see it happening. The Port Miami deepened its harbor and installed super post-Panamax cranes. LA and Long Beach are automating terminals and expanded rail yards. All of this progress a sign that the US finally sees the costs of staying small. And if we build enough capacity, we might even attract new routes.
What you can do now is maybe take those ships, go around Africa and go not just to Europe, but go straight across to the eastern Gulf Coast. Where you're starting to see ultra larges come in is going to be the new port in Peru that the Chinese have set up. That's going to be another transshipment hub.
So for now, the world's biggest ships will keep sailing right past us.
In transportation technology, nothing gets more beautiful than this.
I became an economist because I wanted to know how we can create a world where everybody experiences prosperity. The very first lesson I learned is that exchange is the key. Folks specialize, we get more efficient, we create more value out of fewer resources. International exchange helps bring peace and cooperation.
Now with the ship turned around, they have put it into berth. Here for the next few days while the cranes lower and unload thousands of goods for you and me. As cool as all this is, we could be having ships 60% bigger if we have the will. The United States was a leader in global shipping. Why can't we be it in the future? That would lower shipping costs and in turn increasing the purchasing power of your wages.
Economic research has long shown this works. To put this into regular numbers, America's involvement in globalization since 1950 is associated with an extra $19,000 for every household every year into our pocketbooks. That's no small number. After building the Panama Canal, inventing container shipping, and flaunting the world's most powerful navy, why would we let the next generation of shipping technology pass us by?
You think business explains the world? Butts explain the world. Look at that tugboat, keeping that butt secure so that ship can stay in the channel. The editor right now is like, oh my God, we are putting that in.
Anything else?
Carl be damned.